Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. I just see that the camera is in place, so we have all of you here in the hall, but we have also people at home just trying to follow online teachings, which is really a blessing for many because they don't have a monastery nearby. So good evening. So today is the Uposatha Day, new moon, and as Ajahn Hemsako mentioned at mealtime, we are just halfway through the Vasa, the rainy season, and finally we had a bit of rain, which is a real blessing after all months of drought, really. And so, what to say? I just finished my 3 weeks solitary time, and I was fortunate to be able to be in a kuti in the forest, which is very beautiful. But also, when you're in the forest, when you're in nature, you are much more directly connected to what is happening in nature. And with the drought, it was quite frightening in many ways. And when you stay in one place, so I did my walking meditation, just above the pond. And I don't think I went for a walk. I just really stayed around the kuti and was sitting. I mean, the blessing of the good weather was that I could spend the whole day outside and sit outside and walk outside and stand outside and do the chores, sweeping. And so you become very connected to the plant world and the animal world around you. And then when the mind is becoming more quiet, you see and notice things you usually don't notice. So I would like to share a little bit. So when the retreat started, everything was bone dry, and then you see people smoking and just kind of throwing their cigarette ends into the dry leaves. So, so I addressed it a few times. I couldn't not say anything, so I just tried to be friendly because, people are often just not connected. They are living in their world and in their attention and need to smoke and then you throw the cigarette away in the end. So they were not aware. So I thought, and it's not good to go and say, what are you doing? But really, oh, you enjoy your cigarette, that's good. So, but also, could you please notice, how dry the leaves are, and it's better really to thoroughly put the, how do you say, extinguish, the glowing bits. And I was quite surprised. One man had pulled out a little metal box, and he extinguished his cigarette in the metal box and then put the lid on it. So he was, it's really beautiful, some people can't stop smoking, but at least they are aware of, what is happening around them. So that was actually last year, so I just mentioned that it's not always a bad experience. Sometimes I can really delight in the way how aware people are. And then you could see the animals, it was quite interesting. The birds nearly completely stopped singing. The forest was really quiet. So usually they do the territorial singing in the morning, and then at least in the evening, nothing. Where are they? I could see them. They were desperate to get anything, because usually they live on insects, and when it's so dry, there are very few insects around, or worms. So the poor blackbirds were kind of turning the whole forest floor upside down in order to find a worm. And they got skinnier and skinnier, and poor fellows, In the end, I found a song thrush dead, lying there like a stick. It's really, I picked it up. It was very light, just bones and feathers. And so they obviously starved. When they have the pond, they can at least drink, but they starved to death partly. And the squirrels were skin and bones, and they were getting very excited because the beeches, which are plenty in the forest, the beech nuts started to be edible, have something inside. And my walking path is directly underneath 2 or 3 beeches, half of it, and the other part is actually without tree shadow, so no trees above. And so I could see in the morning, I just watched when the light, the sun comes out, or the light comes, first it's getting daylight, and at some point there was commotion in the trees. So the squirrels they had their nest somewhere in one holly, where I couldn't even see the nest because it was the hollies are so dense. But something happened, and then they tried to avoid running on the ground, so they tried to go from branch to branch, from one tree to the next tree, and they had to jump quite distances. It was quite amazing. They're good survivors. So they had certain pathways through from one tree to the next, certain branches which would work for them to get from one tree to the next. And so I think there were 5 or 6, family of 5 or 6 squirrels. I couldn't really figure out how many there were because they would go also back and forth. So, So they would completely raid the first beach. And when I did walking meditation underneath, I was kind of bombarded with the shells of the beech nuts. If you know beech nuts, they have these little spiky shells, and you can pull them apart, and then you have the little segments in the middle, and the inside of the segments are supposed to be nutty and edible. So apparently, because of the drought, most of these segments were empty. So the squirrels were just kind of sitting up at the end of the branches, hanging in there and finding a way to hang on and eat, somehow. And with the speed, unbelievable, they just would throw everything which was too light and obviously empty away, down, and dong, dong, dong. My whole walking path was covered with, remains of beech nuts. And actually, I got a few. They threw them on me, so it was funny. Well, and eventually the tree was pretty empty, so they had to move to other trees. So they had to jump new distances. And I tried not to look too much because, you're supposed to draw your attention more inwards. But it was also good to just be connected, it's just happening around you. And I had to sweep the walking path more often because I was going barefoot, and the beech nuts can be quite sharp. And so I couldn't quite avoid to just see what was going on and work together with them somehow. And eventually they got a little bit fatter. They are not really fat because the beech nuts obviously are not very full, don't have much nourishment, but at least they look a bit less skinny now and look healthier. So that was good. And then in the pond, I can see little bits of the pond, not much. And when it was so hot, when it is so hot and you don't have rain, the water in the pond loses oxygen somehow. And so the fish, I don't know how they are called, they're kind of, young, a lot of younger ones, and they can get actually this long, not like carbs, but longer, slimish and long. And now the small ones are like this somehow. And they would be in, how do you call them, school of fish, or how do you, something like this. So they would just hang on just under the surface so that they always could actually get some oxygen from above, so they would come up. And that was rather funny because they played and they jumped and they kind of chased each other somehow. So again, I had to be careful not to get too fascinated. But at least, yeah, and then when it was raining in the end, they disappeared altogether, so they could go deeper and I couldn't see them. Of course they are still there. So that was quite nice, that the rain kind of re-oxygenated the pond and they could go, the fish could go deeper. And also safer for them because the heron was around and trying to get his share. So, and now the birds are singing again in the morning. Once the dawn comes, at a certain point they start singing. And when I do my morning puja, often I do it together with the robin. So that is that part of forest life. And in terms of, you may have some of you may have noticed when we had the first rain maybe a week ago, suddenly hundreds of little frogs appeared, and they have come out of the pond, tadpoles and then little frogs, maybe 2 months ago, but it was obviously too dry, so they disappeared. I thought they were all dead, but they must have hidden under the leaves or whatever, not to get dehydrated. But they didn't get insects, and they didn't grow. So now 2 months later, they were still that small. And anyway, so may they grow and be happy. Hardly any insects. The pipistrella, the little bats, which fly in the morning and the evening, they were just zigzagging around, and I don't know, I cannot see how skinny they are because they're so quick. But it was not easy for animal life. And then there was, sometimes I had a look at the BBC news whether there was any warnings in terms of forest fires. And of course you may know much more than I do. They had masses of forest fires in France and Spain and Portugal because of the drought and, the lack of awareness of people, or even arson, so huge forest fires. Cittaviveka said she just came from Portugal and was living there in a caravan in the forest, and she just left before the forest was actually burning down. So she was lucky that she got out safely. There have been forest fires in England as well, but we are lucky that we didn't have any. But I remembered that we have a chant, which is the English translation is Quail's Protection Chant. And it's an amazing story. We pull it out and chant it when we have situations like this where there's a danger of fire and for Westerners, it may sound a little bit superstitious, to chant to protect against fire. But apparently, they're very powerful. Not only the story itself, I will read it out bit by bit. I got the English translation. But when they had the big forest fires in California, and we heard from Abhayagiri, that the forest around Abhayagiri was burning, and they did a lot of. That not only did they do a lot of chanting, but they also did good fire breaks. So you do that too, and different from other places where they didn't have the fire breaks and obviously no chanting. The fire stopped around Abhayagiri, so that in the end the firefighters were actually using the monastery to fight the fire from the monastery. That was the only safe place, basically. They were quite surprised, really, that the fire, even I think in front of I don't know, with the kutis, I think even the kutis didn't burn down. So this chant is quite amazing, and I can get a bit emotional about it because it really hits something. Quails. Quails are these tiny birds, and unfortunately they have tiny eggs which human beings find very tasty, so they get the eggs get taken away. And so it's one of these tiny birds, and So how can a tiny bird like a quail protect us from fire? So the story goes, I don't know whether that goes actually back to a Jataka tale. You know that the Buddha, later the Buddha, so before he was a Buddha, he made a vow to become a bodhisattva, to work towards Buddhahood and lead a very virtuous life so that he purifies his spiritual and develops his spiritual faculties, qualities, and so until he finally would realize Buddhahood. And so I don't know how many hundreds, thousand lifetimes, I'm not sure about numbers, he was different beings. He was animals, he was birds, rabbits, I don't know. And of course he was also went through different stages of human development. And it is said that, I think he said during his many lifetimes as a bodhisattva, he tried to keep the 5 precepts at least, just to make sure that the development of virtues was happening towards, in direction of Buddhahood. So virtues, to keep the precept is a wonderful way to start really to live in harmony with nature and connected with nature and not do any harm. So you just were reciting the 8 precepts. And so not to kill, not to take what is not given, not to misuse your own body or other bodies, for pleasure reasons, and to speak the truth, and not to drink anything which clouds the mind so that you can't keep the rest of the precepts. And he said, so during his many lifetimes as a bodhisattva, he was breaking the precept because of this. When you are a warrior, you kill. So he had lifetimes when he was a warrior, but he never broke the 4th precept. He never said a lie, not even to protect himself or others. So he reasoned about that he said, if I would have, he said, if as a bodhisattva you break the 4th precept, you lose actually your inner orientation towards the goal you are going forth. So the Dhamma is the truth. So when you kind of, bend the truth, you actually lose your mental clarity of spiritual orientation. And so whatever happened, he was speaking the truth, even if that would mean that he would be whatever persecuted. And also not to protect others. But he learned also to not always say the whole truth. So if he wouldn't lie, but he would sometimes just say as much as he needed. There's one story where I think he was already the Buddha at that time. He was sitting and meditating when he heard that somebody was in great distress running past. And then a while later he heard a whole group of people running past, and they actually addressed him, did you see somebody running through here? And he said, no, I didn't see anybody. Well, he heard somebody. So he didn't hear, I heard somebody running in that direction or something. No, he didn't. He said, I didn't hear anything. He knew that this man was innocent, and that when the other men would catch him, they would probably kill him or not treat him well, at least. So he didn't have a reason to say more than I didn't see him. So I found that interesting, he didn't lie, but also he just said as much as he needed in order not to lie and still could protect this other guy. So we can speak wisely, how much we reveal of what we know, and stay with the truth. Not in order to cover up bad things, but sometimes it's also good to protect good things by not exposing too much, not saying too much. So in our Vinaya also, we are just on our side, so with Anagar Kanoriko and Kelly now also, we go through Bhikkhu Bodhi's teachings about the Noble Eightfold Path, and especially right speech. And he explains really in great length is not the right word, in a very intellectually beautiful way, why we keep the precepts, why it's so important, and why right speech, and especially not lying, is so important for spiritual development. And so then we discuss sometimes also, how easy it is to bend the truth, because just as a worldly habit, when something didn't quite work out the way you wanted, you don't tell anybody. You don't want to look bad. If they ask you, oh no, nothing, So once we keep the precept, we really need to develop a huge amount of awareness, actually, when I'm asked, I have to say, does anybody know where the lid of the teapot is? Yeah, sorry, I dropped it, So you could not say anything, but if you're asked like this, then you need to say something. And so that's just one example. I dropped the teapot. No, I dropped the lid, not the teapot. But I really, I really made an effort actually to say it for myself, so that I don't get into this funny situation to try to avoid to address that, or So it takes courage to speak the truth, because especially when things are not going well. But it's also a huge relief, that you don't have to go around and cover things up. And that's the blessing of speaking the truth. You may have a short pain, but you have a great freedom from having, revealed what needed to be revealed. And I mean, that's just an example, and you probably know yourself. And I also remember as a child, you need to learn ethics. And as a child, I did lie because I didn't dare to say the truth because I was afraid to be punished or, whatever. But then the mistrust which is suddenly exposed towards you because my parents somehow knew I did it and no, I didn't do it. Then you are confronted with this mistrust, and that is much more painful than to say, well, yeah, it happened, And so I went through a few teachings in that sense until I realized it's actually easier to say, what happened. And I guess you all have your own stories about that, how you arrive at a place where you appreciate that you can keep the fourth precept. So now coming back to the quail, what does the quail have to do with truth? So it's a quail aware of virtue in the world, so it's probably a Jataka tale from a kind of very highly mentally developed quail. So the text, the translation is a bit funny. It could be better, but it's just how it is. So in the world there is the quality of virtue, truth and purity and compassion too. The quail speaking. I, according with truth, shall make an unsurpassed truth asseveration, reflecting on the power of Dhamma and calling to mind the conquerors in the past. So that's a mouthful. What is a truth asseveration? I had to look it up. That's not a word which is part of my vocabulary, and it wasn't easy to find it. So asseveration, the part of it is severe. To assevere is the verb. To assevere. Severe is usually not a very nice word. Severe illness, severe accident, severe this, severe that. But severe can also be an asseveration, or to assevere something is you speak in a way that you stress the importance of something, or I don't know how common this word is, how often that is used. I think it's rather old-fashioned. So you find something so important that you give it severity, you give it weight, you give it urgency. So that's the point. So the quail wanted to give a message, an urgent message. And then reflecting on the power of Dhamma and calling to mind the conquerors in the past. So the quail was aware that she or he is, the truth is something not just quail's life, but it's something in the world which is very important, and people who have been, the conquerors of the past are the Buddhas, basically, from the past. So so there was some kind of awareness of, that dimension in the quail's mind. So then it goes on, depending on this power of truth, I made a truth asseveration. And now the quail's message as such comes. Here are wings which do not fly, here are feet which do not walk, and mother and father have gone out. Cittaviveka, the fire, go back. This act of mine I made with truth. The great blazing crested flames avoided 16 lengths of land. like fire that has to water reached. For truth, my equal, there is not. This is my perfection of truth. So, wow, it's a bit unbelievable, but obviously, this little bird. Okay, so now in the Indian cosmology, fire, the forces of nature are animated forces. So there are devas, there are spirits, and obviously there's a fire spirit. So the spirit has a fire, so has a name, Cittaviveka. There may be others. I'm not so knowledgeable about that. So you can speak to the fire god or fire, how you want to call that, fire spirit. And obviously they understand and have spoken to with such a truth asseveration. It obviously had an impact, and so the fire deva had some compassion, obviously, some understanding, and stopped like fire that has water reached. So I don't know what 16 lengths of land mean, but I thought it's a good chant to chant in the Hammerwood situation. And so, I think we did it a few times actually together in the when we were chanting in the nuns' shrine room at Aloka. But I did it also from the kuti, and it was a great joy actually to chant that and just to reflect on the power of truth, how. And also it is said in the, I think, I'm not sure whether I'm not aware of the sutta where it's said, or whether it's in the commentaries, that at times when the people of the country were very virtuous, there were less droughts, there were less fires, there were less natural disasters, because the spirits of the elements, the nagas and the gandas, and I don't know, they all have names, they were more respecting what was happening, and they were more contained. And when things go out of hand, then also the elements go out of hand. And I reflect sometimes about that, and what with the increasing drought now, we know about carbohydrate and rising of temperature worldwide and whatever, and the droughts are an expression of that, so I think it's a good, this chant is actually a good reminder for us to remember that we are not helpless, even if a quail can do it, we are a little bit more powerful, and we have more means to actually express the truth and act in a way that is a good example, and especially around truthfulness, is so uplifting if somebody speaks the truth, even in a situation where they are not looked at very, if people don't want to hear the truth, they can put you down and discredit you when you speak up. So it takes a lot of power, When I just remember the Swedish girl, Greta Thunberg, with her power, she speaks for climate change. It's amazing, that a teenage girl kind of has dedicated her life really to that. And I think the monastery is a place, where virtue is practiced, and people are invited, to follow and join. And so that's amazing that after 2,000 and 600 years, it's still happening, that this tradition is so strong and can support virtue in that way. So, and it's not just for virtue, it's also for spiritual growth. And we don't only do it for virtue, but we also do it for peace of mind and mental development, and freedom of, letting. If you keep the precept, you share, you protect others, you look at things that we understand how we are suffering when we just pursue our egoistical aims. And so we were chanting the fire sermon at the beginning, at Pujatam. And when you read the translation, it's the attachment to greed, hatred, and delusion. That is what burns, for us, what creates the pain. And the disenchantment, the looking through the vanity of greed, hatred, and delusion helps us to let go, and then the fire goes out. I mean, the Nibbana is synonymous. What is it? What's the English term? Is synonymous for the fire going out, cooling. And so that's the spiritual goal, really, to free ourselves from the passions and from the anger, aversion, and the self-conceit, all of that. So it's not just the forest fire, it's also this fire. And this is in our culture quite, how do you call that? Interesting, because more and more, the last maybe 30 years, people speak about, I'm so passionate. So you need to be passionate about everything. And that seems to be very good, Ouch. Yeah, so how to get dispassionate, how to get disenchanted, to be enchanted, how to get disenchanted without just playing dead, denying the senses or whatever. We need to feel in order to develop more clarity around Dhamma and really understanding. We need to feel our pains and not just, I don't want to look. No, look and see, cause and result, and then the bearing with it is actually what helps us to understand more deeply and see the vanity really of whatever we hold on to. And so the disenchantment is a result of deeply understanding the causes and the results, of holding on to things. And so I think I better stop. yeah, I hope what I said is encouraging, and also for your practice, and also for if you go through the forest to open your eyes and really see what is happening, and we can develop compassion, and compassion is also powerful, a powerful virtue, and feeling with the creatures, and that will, how long do I take a shower? Do I take a shower for 10 minutes, or do I say, oh, well, we are short of water, I take a shower for 2 minutes maybe? And so we can make decisions how we use water and other resources, So I wish you well with your spiritual and also worldly harmony.